Okay. Yep, it seems we are live.
Okay. Do we start immediately or do we take 1-2 minutes for kind of having this delay?
Maybe we could wait a little bit.
I mean, because it's going to be available also in the next days, I think we could just go.
Good. Okay, so I mean, if you allow me, I can do a little opening and introduce you to this format and a little bit of context around it and the people that we are here. This format, we are framing it, or we are naming it Hot Topics. And it is more imagined as a space where we would periodically have different artists, curators, or active figures in the field of choreography and dance that we would like to invite, and we would like to have sessions of practicing conversation. And we frame it as a conversation because we would like to keep it a little bit in a format before it becomes anything else. So those conversations are directed towards issues or different practices in the field of choreography and dance. That's kind of the direction that we are interested, or our field that we are focused towards. And also another thing, very important to say, that Hot Topics, it is part of another program that have been initiated already a year and a half ago, which is called Hot Room for Audiences. And that program, it's directed towards opening up more spaces and places where certain discursive practices around choreography and dance could emerge, that we would be more trying to figure out different formats where the relationship between artist, artistic work, and audience could have a different relation than than the ones that we are already very used to on. And then this whole initiative, kind of from focusing on discursive practices and certain disrupted logics that then the already present one in the field. It's by the non-formal group Steam Room, which we are here, which is the Rio Barreto Damas. I don't know where it's in the screen for you, but Jana Pencheva and myself. And for this session, we have invited Ida Daniel, which is here present, and Anna Efrimson, which apparently in a very last moment, due to certain impossibility to be present, we canceled that encounter, and we reschedule it for the next week, most probably within another context. And then maybe it's good to mention a little bit the wider context where it is, how it is everything starting. So Steam Room, it's a non-formal group that we formed like 2 years ago, me, Jana, and Rio. And it is, we have initiated a couple of different projects and initiatives, but the main basic format of idea of functioning is basically to not have any legal representative structure for our team. We call ourselves a team, an artistic team, rather than any legal body structure or organization or NGO. And yes, because we are kind of administratively, 3 of us having access to 4 different countries and 4 different places. And in a way, we try to figure out certain logic, how we could create a support structure for artistically and economically as a team for each other by having the possibility to use all those 4 countries. And yeah, maybe for this thing we can speak later further because it kind of relates to the whole topic and more details around it. And I think more or less that's all, except the last and very important thing to announce that this session, the topic for this session, it's called Imaginative Institution. And then we will learn more for everything that is going to follow, and it's going to be continuing because this first session is just one little aspect from what is going to be coming further, or one little, let's say, molecule. So I think I'm done with the little presentation. If I'm missing anything, please do jump in.
I will maybe just add, just to clarify for whoever is watching, that we understand this meeting as a conversation between colleagues and friends. So we are not aiming to have a lecture or to have a panel discussion, but it's rather like yeah, a conversation between colleagues from the field, let's say. So the whole dramaturgy of the talk, it will be responsibility from all of us. So there is no specific person who is going to guide or to go toward a specific direction, but it's all of us the ones dealing with the time we spend together.
Just a little remark that maybe also just to do not close the doors for it. Conversation can also end up as a lecture. We never know. This is why we frame it as conversation, meaning that it's before it gets defined to whatever it's going to get defined. And another important information to include in all these things that we all missed, that these sessions, they will be found online on our website, which soon is coming up. Which we are more envisioning them as a certain archive of our public procedures of conversating with colleagues, artists, curators, different people active in the field. So we want more to kind of make a certain effort into placing publicly all our kind of working procedures around the issues. I think that sums it up.
And maybe just to mention that these hot topics, apart from our bigger program, Hot Room for Audiences, is supported by Culture Fund of Bulgaria, that we have the possibility to realize this segment from the program for now.
Okay, but let's start.
Yes.
Maybe as a proposal for a start, I would like to invite you to do the dreaming practice together around the specific topic we talked today, that is imaginative institutions. So to explain the dreaming practice, it goes like this. So each of us will have 5 minutes to speak and to wonder and to dream and to vomit around and about imaginative institutions. And during these 5 minutes, the person who is talking is not going to be interactive, so it's just like a stream of thought. When I say vomiting, I mean specifically that like you can articulate and you can like construct what you are saying in whatever way you want. Doesn't need to have like a clear line of thought or consequential line of thought. It can be like personal anecdotes. You can pose questions. You can say things that are not really, that you are not sure you agree with even. So it's kind of like a clearing out, and it's a way to enter the conversation, also to meet each other and to meet our points of view in relation to the topic. And yeah, as a start, I will be using a timer. So if somebody just go longer than 5 minutes, I will just, or maybe put a reaction or just say like, hey, it's about time, something like that. Is that kind of clear? Or
if someone has not enough dreams to fill out the 5 minutes, will you push them to go to 5 minutes?
no?
Is it like an ultimate period that brings enough vomit, or?
I think the 5 minutes is kind of the limit. You can use
Okay.
whatever you want. There is no necessity to be pushed to talk or to extend as much as you want. It's not like I don't know. Yeah, there is no advocacy. You don't need to fight for it. So
Okay.
if you have something to vomit, you vomit. If not, it's okay.
Okay.
We're gonna wait.
Yeah. um. So yeah, I will say that whoever feels like starting could start, to not put in the position of yeah, like asking somebody or not. So we can take 20 seconds or something, whatever.
I could start. So we come to speak around the imaginative institutions, and specifically what I'm interested in, this is imaginative institutions around choreography and dance, and what that means in the context of this performing arts field. So for me, this it's very much connected. These institutions, it's very much connected to the how we work, how we experience our work, how we develop in our sphere, and how we how we work on making wider opportunities. So basically, I can observe the sphere in several directions. So one, it's really connected to the conditions and the situations in the artists in the field, and what is the place of the one institution in that as a supportive structure of that artist. So for me, really that mean that these imaginative institutions will open space, like for to condition the artist in a sense of like having enough space and time for working on the process of its work. So basically, not only focusing on like now I'm speaking mostly in the context of Bulgaria, from where I come from. So in that context, how is the institutional support of the artists and the sphere and choreography? So now thinking about imaginative and what is possible as an artist, then I would think more how to support my work, how to support my labor as an artist, and what are the possibilities there. So basically, me as an artist, I will need a space for work, a space for wandering, space to more resources to that as well. And, of course, that institution also I can imagine like totally think like this all structures around like the development as an art, development of the artwork, or what is needed in specific context, or specific location, but also like working, like thinking about the imaginative institution. Is that I'm wondering, is that connected with specific context, or we need to think as a wider structure? What is the context of dance and choreography, and need really to connect with specific locations, and we come from the needs from every location and country, or we can observe this like needs of choreography in nowadays? This is more like questions that I as well. So I don't know, I imagine that institution is really like supportive structure for the artist mostly, and the needs around the artist work and artist experience and labor. Yeah, maybe I stop here.
Maybe I can continue then. What comes to my mind, and it came right away when you first mentioned this imaginative institution, is was the difference between imaginary institution and imaginative institution. And today I gave to myself such an answer like, the imaginary, someone imagined her, or many people, or there was someone and some many that imagine her, but the imaginative is the one who can imagine. It's there is a very interesting process that you kind of propose, I think, when you call an institution imaginative. And by now, I think for me, it was a big work to do to understand that any institution is imaginary, because it was first imagined and then instituted. That in instituting kind of cannot happen without first imagining it. But it's a very nice aspect to imagine that an imagined institution can by itself become imaginative and or stay imaginative. And maybe it's also an interesting way of thinking how what usually we have against institutions, or old institutions, or institutions that we think were there forever, is that they are fixed and stagnated and there is no space or room in them. So somehow to imagine that imaginative processes are already in kind of gives me this image of bubbles of air that allow for inner movement. Another thought is this feeling of how to be in an institution, and how maybe also these bubbles are important. We usually kind of reproach each other when we say that we are in our own bubble. But I think it also can be a place of like this bubble can allow for processes to start developing and get stronger. And then either this bubble needs to break, or it will kind of stick itself to another bubble, and then it will become a bigger one. And I don't know what will be the process, but somehow this bubble of air and air inside of the institution for me is a thing to think. And yeah, another thing I lately have in mind is the are temporary institutions, and are there institutions that are already established with the thought that as they had a beginning, they will also have an end. And for example, I had a bit of an experience with this when we were imagining what act the Association for Independent Performing Arts in Bulgaria we would want to be in 10 years, which was 10 years ago now. At that moment, I was imagining that in 10 years it will be very beautiful if we don't exist, because our purpose will be already completed. It's not like that. The need of this type of association and others like this. Yeah, I'm back. Yeah, so somehow temporary institutions also for me is interesting. And another vomit somewhere around. Yeah, of course, it's support structures. And maybe the support structures kind of go into direction of what you were describing as a team that has no legal body. And I feel, yeah, that kind of through these last 15 years, when I started more and more thinking of how to change or restructures conditions of work, support structures started appearing, and some stayed, some disappeared. And now living in Gießen, I think I have quite plastic, let's say, support structure, because people gather together, then kind of physically they are not in the same place, but still there are these threads of support that we can feel, and sometimes they are closer to one direction and then wider in another. But yeah.
Just shortly to mention, 5 minutes passed already.
Thanks.
Shortly. Should I pick up from there or just continue my dream? Yeah, I was, while also listening, I was thinking of missing so many things in the beginning, important things to mention as well. And it's so connected to this topic because, of course, this issue, or like I always have certain kind of disturbance to call it an issue, because for me it's a literally beautiful poetic space. Because since the moment we started with such a structures of like steam room, and now coming up new ones that are going to be from next week, it's going to be the opening of our new institution. And I'm constantly fascinated, or my fascination, or like even kind of build up a huge love relationship, it's with the moment, because let me first put a context that I am born in Macedonia, then studied in Bulgaria. In terms of like family, I will not even enter in that discussion. Is it Serbia, Macedonia, or Bulgaria? Because it's totally mishmash. And then I also am kind of have my residence permits in Spain and in Sweden, because I studied in Sweden, and in Spain because of partnership and stuff. So basically I have access to 4 systems, and that has been a very big hassle to figure out administratively, bureaucratically, how does one exist that way, and how far that goes, and like what are the, how to say, the individual relationships between all of them, until the moment that we broke through. And it's like, and I start more and more falling in love in systems, and which I consider them like certain systems I really think we have institutionalized, and some of them I really want to institutionalize. And now I am having a really strong wish to also hear from maybe all of us, how do we understand institution, and how far, like what do we take in from it, or what do we have under as an understanding from institution? Because for me, strictly, I use the choreographic language of like certain, for me, it's a certain format of a practice, of practicing continuation. And I'm totally in love in these imaginative institutions or imaginative structures, since they're undetectable. They're bureaucratically undetectable, and they're how to say, also systematically almost undetectable, in the sense that they're so movable, like at least for the format of the ones that I've been experiencing, because since one, also I've been thinking a little bit around the thing that since one format need to be one, like it exists only while it is being imagined, or it stays as an active format or active support structure only on the level of imagination, but it actually have an impact in your economical and let's say artistic or daily life situation. That for me became such a friction, where as if certain literally holographic, non-existent materially or let's say bureaucratically formats, they start becoming a support structure. So you could, I'm speaking as a support structure, that they could become not only economical support but also infrastructural support in the direction of reaching certain intentions of like you like, because me as an artist, a huge part, if I would like to exist, there is a very different dynamics in Balkan and in the rest of the countries, since like in Balkan, I consider it way more, the space is very much open for artists to collaborate with spaces, where lately the practice goes so much towards certain European standard of venues, where one, when it becomes cultural artistic director of a venue, then it starts becoming a profiling, then which artist can collaborate with which venue. It becomes very in a way certain, let's say, profiled homogenic mass of let's say aesthetic production. And that I considered it, so for a super long time, a issue and a problem. And until the moment, then I was like, okay, I'm going to try to start building up structures that they don't exist, and institutions that they do not exist, but they very much run on the basis of institution. So basically simulating practices which are support practices between different colleagues and different partnerships, and literally done.
5 minutes. You can finish, but just to know.
No, done. 5 minutes.
Okay, so I can go. Let me put time to myself. Yeah, oh, yeah. When I first started like thinking about imaginative institution, like for me, really the big question, or the big monster, let's say, is like, what is institution, or what do I mean by institution? What do I dream of institution? And I think a lot about home, let's say, an institution as a house, as a place where I feel safe, and a place where I can find resources to do my work, let's say. This is how I understand, or how I dream about institution. And the fact of using imagination and calling it imaginative institution, it, for me, comes from the fact that like I don't find any safe house in any of the institutions I know generally. So like how to build this safe space and safe environment that can give that can support my work. And also in relation to like shifting hierarchies of because I mean, this is like really old speech or discourse, but like institutions are there because we artists do the work somehow. It's like without us there is no institution. I'm talking specifically now in relation to the field of dance and choreography in my own experience. So I wonder a lot, like about how is it possible that me as an artist, I need to sell myself and build an identity, usually like without any support of any collaborative or collective practices, but rather creating one own single character. How is it possible that I need to chase this institution when in my understanding it should be the other way around? Like the institution should be there somehow to, not to serve, but to collaborate with me in a kind of not flat basis, but like in the same level, let's say. Yeah, let me see. Yeah, one big part for me, or important part in relation to imaginative institution, is the fact that they are constructed or imagined collectively. I don't see possibility with my own capacities to kind of function in that way. And I see a lot of potential in working together with the friends and colleagues, and kind of like imitate or take the basis and ground of what an institution is, because it's like a specific set of rules and a specific understanding is something somehow solidified. You can recognize, and there is a filter you know, and you need to go through it. Okay, what I'm trying to say is like an institution set up certain rules, and so by building this collectively, and all like also remembering that like this space is a living space, so not to let it solidify in the time, but rather creating a space collectively that we all can recognize because they have a specific structure, but it's constantly moldable. Okay, that's what I was trying to say. So yeah, this is one thing. And I don't know, I think I'm also like a lot triggered about the use of language, and like I'm interested in imaginative institutions without a legal body or without a bureaucratic structure, and what does it do to this body or shape, that it is called institution, but it is not an actual one, let's say, or not like conventionally understood. Yeah, so that's 4 minutes 50, and that's my stream of thought, and I'm over and out.
Yeah, I would say, because this format of dreaming practice, usually we have it because we work in a format of collective authorship already many years, especially me and Jean, and then Dario joined. And this is the format that we start using it in the last 3-4 years. Like every start of every idea, every project, every concept, every whatever it is a certain, let's say, tool of kind of meeting point and vomiting issues, vomiting concerns, and everybody's personal stories and anecdotes connected to it. And then usually we have like a second or third circle where it would be like, okay, now we could enter in either grabbing somebody's dream and redream it, or you could go into literally asking questions or clarification of somebody else's dream, or just start another circle of dreaming, since everybody was dreaming, so maybe you got motivated from somebody else's dream. So I would say let's not go circles, maybe, I don't know, or I don't know if somebody wants to invite in some other space, I would say let's just maybe go to kind of conversating.
I will jump immediately to respond around like these institutions as home that you mentioned, because I don't know from experience, like with institutions, like what is imagine from my experience is one, you know, that institution is something, because like as a experience that I imagine, like this something very heavy, very bureaucratic, very like very solid with the rules, non-movable. It's there and stays there. So it could be the imaginative institution. Then in that sense, for me, it's maybe something totally on the opposite side that I experience the institutions are. But also we speak about the institution, what is institution, and that we, or you also, Ate, you said let's also share what is we think about what is institution, because for me it's a structure that provide a mechanism of work that it's like in some direction, and it's like collectively, like from group of people, but also like this regular institution and imaginative institution. If we work in structure of steam room, if we go of like hierarchy and we are like working on collective authorship, like our things and our project initiations, so like in the these like institutions that I connected, always I connect with strong hierarchy and very not so, it's collective, it's group, but it's very clear the steps to go. It's not like flat. So it's like this, it's for me the two sides like that I'm confronting word institution, and that depends of what you place the institution as a word is changing the meaning. But yeah.
Yeah, but this is the thing, for example.
And also maybe because of the experience that I have with institutions.
I think
I finish.
something. No, not about finish. I think you receive our sound later, and also while you speak, I experience disturb the sound from her. I don't know if the rest of you experience. I don't hear properly everything. Maybe it's through the internet, but that's the issue now. But what I wanted to jump in a conversation more that actually from what you speak on, I'm going further that like why the necessity for imaginative institution for me very strongly comes certain issues that are a little bit coming to the point of being unbearable in nowadays context in the sphere of contemporary dance and or in the sphere of dance and choreography specifically speaking. And this is mostly because as an artist that works like as a freelance artist, we especially us, or I don't know, me, let's say, especially functions on exclusively on public money and certain, let's say, network structures. For a long time observing, it's like when you do not state your place of residence as a one place, like yeah, we all travel, but where do you live? And when you don't want to state it as a one place, but you want to state it as 4 places, you start losing from all institutions, public institutions, and not only, like very much from collect environments, or especially representatives of certain, like let's say stronger structures like network type of institutions or venue type of institutions where the public one, the funds, where it becomes an issue. You need to kind of state, and you need to constantly play the ball of like changing your CVs like every 2 minutes or every 5 hours, since you are parallelly having applications everywhere running. And due to the fact that there is certain necessity of that art form or that art practice need to belong there. They need to finance like in Sweden, the Swedish one, in Bulgaria, the Bulgarian one. Like it's a constant push of nationalizing the art practice. And this is more than ever felt not only from those structures now during COVID period of all these 6 months, where there were activations in the different scenes I was trying to follow in all countries. And when you see the colleagues of yours, which are functioning like the same way, but they have been, for example, more active in certain local dynamics, in one locality, let's say, still internationally connected, and all of this is clear, like appearing as proposals, very nationalistic ideas, very like nationalizing the art practices. And this, for me, it's a huge problem. It's a literally huge problem to continue. And from there, it started the crave for me, first trying to imagine institution that is denationalized, that allows space for denationalized artistic practices. It's because, yeah.
Just to be sure, are you speaking about somehow? Is it also the topics, or is it also the methods that you feel become untranslatable, or are the artistic practices the things that need to prove they belong to this nation, or it's more the functionality of this lack of legal body, or kind of legal belonging to the country? Because I'm thinking that for some projects it becomes easier to exist if they are in an international structure, if they kind of prove that they are valuable for how to say, export of the national culture somewhere. But I'm thinking, following your thoughts, that maybe the understanding of what contemporary art is different in these different countries, and then you need to change this somehow accordingly, which is maybe
like more precisely what I speak of, for example, with concrete examples from Life Dynamics. That's through international projects. They, of course, in the last years and since a long time, they've been gaining so much of possibility and importance, and like it's a different, let's say, value there in relation to national ones. But for example, when you go to practicality of it, of international ones, there is a production and there is a co-production method. And in that sense, for example, if you happen to be one of those artists, that certain specific figure from specific network starts co-producing your work, still you are presented as having one base. You have one base, all the others are your co-producers. But when you are one artist, like me, for example, then Alexander, I would need practically to place that Alexander Georgiev from Macedonia collaborates and co-produces with Alexander Georgiev from Sweden, which is co-producing him Alexander Georgiev from Spain, and which is co-producing him Alexander Georgiev from Bulgaria. And that logic, bureaucratically, it is not allowed from the systems. And this is what I'm speaking. And it's the same thing. You go to network, which networks, like they are certain, how to say, framed by certain bureaucratic structure, but in a way they're very much a step towards imaginative institution structure. And then you get invited to this network to be co-produced as artists from Bulgaria. And in my case, this is always like brilliant story. I've been literally, I think, invited in networks as artists from Sweden, as artists from Bulgaria, as artists from Macedonia, and still I'm waiting that they invite me from Spain. It's a little bit, like even from our own colleagues and things, it's not about anybody's choice, but this is the whole infrastructure, how funding bodies work, like where the money gets divided, how this need to be excused. Now in the program, we need somebody who is from Belarus. Now in the program, we need somebody who is from, because those budgets, they need to be excused. And in that moment, like for so many years, I'm feeling that the artists and the artistic practices, they're just turning into monetary system to satisfy certain bigger, wider, like let's say more European type of dynamics, because I speak exclusively for European type of dynamics because I don't have so much experience and knowledge out of European. And this is the issue, first of all, that I got like, okay, this is an alert state for me if I would need to start now handling and making hyper map in my head where my art like what nation my art need to represent, and what nation my artistic practice and me as an artist need to represent in which moment. And since I don't know, let's say my artistic practice is very much influenced by the four places, because everything what I do take care that I do pay my taxes in every single country where I'm working, and I do place my presence in try to place my presence in every single of them. So yes,
Can I
taking.
jump in?
Hmm?
No, sorry. Because like I'm from what I hear, like yeah, like and I know how you work mainly because I also work that way. So like I'm thinking in like with all these barriers that we encounter and all these like limitations, I'm thinking how the imagination takes place on this. Like because imagination as a source of I don't know, like speculating and wondering, like there is I find it really powerful, let's say. But then how to put into practice this imagination? So like I don't know, just like an open question, like what are the actual practical limits of imagining? Also like with this like new project we are working on, like you know, even how do we function as a steam room team, for example, like there are limits, you know, that like there are already established pathways that we just try to like instead of go straight we go diagonally or whatever, but like we, you know, there is a map already built. So I'm thinking how to deal with imagination without only staying in this realm of like everything is possible, but like how, yeah, like what is this friction, or how do we work with this friction? This is something that I wonder because we always face a wall at some point. Like it's always like okay, and then like how, yeah, is it like a living? Is it like a continuous process of trying to re-articulate? Like is imagination also like related to this? Yeah, to a flux, to like a constant change, like maybe it's that like it kind of gets solidified because you always need to go somewhere. I don't know, like I don't know if you.
That's very nice. I think what also you said now about this imagine or imaginative institution needs to be constant request that needs constant spoken, like to have talks around all, not to stay to one stable meaning. I don't know. It depends of the. It's like it's this movable structure that we need, not like granted and that's it, but it's like it's it's just changing constantly, but also how to be in the same moment enough positive and solid, like even if it's like movable, even if it's like changing, needs to have this stability somehow, like that we like call it institution and have the like to work on the things that we want to work with these institutions, like how still to keep the solid moment and to keep it movable is the question.
But there I'm a little bit wondering, is it about stabilizing the institution, or the institution giving a support structure for stability? It's a totally different engagements, or totally different, how you call this, like approach.
But also looking into what you are doing now with this conversation and the work you did last year also with these discursive situations, to me, you're already working on a different relationship to institutions. And somehow, for example, this image of institution is the one to make my work safe or give me safety, a safetiness. I think this is already not present so much in what I, as an outsider of your work, observe. I think safety of our work belongs to us. It's our responsibility. It wouldn't ever be the responsibility of the institution. I think it's us who need to inject maybe institutions with these all types of bubbles. And I think also this amazing imaginative or imaginary institutions of the four Alexanders. I think it's such a beautiful construct, but it's very convincing and it's very much working, and it exposes quite some things, and not only just the thing that we like living in Europe. Some of us are more in Europe, some are outside, but that borders still exist. But it exposes really contexts, and I still believe that for me, for example, it's really different what are the triggers that I want to address when I work in Bulgaria and when I work here in Germany, or when I, for some moments, had the chance to work in US. Even there in different states, it felt different. So somehow, yeah, the four Alexanders for me is quite an obvious structure, and it's a problem, but at the same time, it is quite affirmative. It can work, I think.
It works.
Yeah, and I don't only mean like functionally in terms of being recognized, but also as as a start of different ways of approaching institutions and how we relate to them. There is another word or thing that I kind of remembered around preparing for this talk, which was epistemic solidarity, which is not really trust, and it's not really coinciding, knowing the same situation, but kind of being able to relate through your own situation with somebody else's situation. And then I think this quite exists in our field.
Because while I was thinking before, I was relating very much to family structures. For me, it's not so much, I don't want to speak so much of like institutionalizing the family structure, but there are certain practices and formats in the family structures where like have been, let's say, in a different way being practiced and implemented certain institutionalization of like safetyness, of security, of also there is a format of like coexisting, but there is also a format of like collective authorship, but there is like constant disruption of like of power structures, of focus, of values, of how economy is being driven, how economy is being spreaded. Of course, we have different different examples of different family cases or different family practices, but still, because it is not so rigidly like institutionalized, but in the different cultural, in different with different, I could say, cultural backgrounds, then you have the different practices. So it is so moldable, it is so, how to say, adaptable, so that, of course, in a case something incident happens in the family, it affects the whole family and it changes the whole dynamic. Where, I don't know, like making just simple and stupid comparison to very rigid and established, non-movable, affirmative, beton type of institutions, which are most of the public institutions, let's say, in big number and percentage of countries, to do not now classify so much. It is like a certain incident happens and the system is keep rolling. There is a system that you would need to communicate with. And this is, for example, for me, the huge difference of experience. You go to Sweden, you many times you cannot reach person with whom you could, like, let's say, share, argue, or get in conflict, because haven't been considered your case. Because no, if your case is so complicated, nobody is responsible to respond on those questions, because it's like, how to say, there is an institution you would need to speak to, and to speak to institution, there's a whole net of different, like, roles and representations in the field, where you go to, like, especially like in Macedonia now, where I'm at the moment, you go to institution, they're like, yeah, this is not my part. You go to the other colleagues, so you always are resent again, facing all this kind of chain of networks. But then you just happen to meet the uncle of the aunt of the sister of the cousin of the neighbor, who is a representative figure of certain thing. You go, you speak with that person, and that person solves the, how to say,
Issue.
case or the issue, or face it, or watch it as a global. And then I see, of course, we have, like, in the different areas or the different countries, different level of also, how to say, putting an authorship of this, like having an authorship of the institution, having, like, becoming a, like, it's like different intensities of owning an institution. Or
Yeah, or being or like it becomes your identity also. Like
yeah,
I am not Dario anymore. I just work in wherever in the municipality of
yeah,
Gran Canaria, and this is who I am. So like, don't like. I mean, of course, it's not. I totally get what you're saying.
I wanted to bring paradox, if you allow me. However, owning it becomes like the bad guy in this moment of owning an institution. It is also a very dangerous power structure. In the same time, there is, in practicality of life dynamics, that's the only thing how your complex and complicated case that institutional system cannot digest it or cannot work it through. That's the only way how somebody would listen your case and institutionally affirm it that exists and can be solved. Without that figure who represents to face it, to hear the whole complexity of it, enters in the case. This is what I call it, a little bit family constellation type of institutions that are family driven, that, like, that you don't get lost in the system without having responses on your questions, but you need to line up like 70 people on the way, and maybe nobody still solves it because it's so complex. You just go to a person, solves your issue, considers you as a human being with a complex life. It's how to say, in term of recognizing issues and giving certain sense of security and stability. Yeah, it is very paradoxical for me.
Paradoxical. Sorry, why is paradoxical?
Because in the same way, however, it such an approach can be very problematic, or it is very problematic of privatization of institution, privatization of power structures, of ownership, of da, da, da. In the same time, such a structure also can offer a certain, let's say, uh, certain recognition of complexities of issues. So it could also communicate easily how institutions could start thinking of more complex situations, because when it comes to bureaucracy, I mean, I'm taking a little bit for granted, but maybe I should not, that cannot cover such a wide range of let's say, human complexity, or not only human life complexity, let's say, in general.
Do you have in mind mainly financing institutions, like institutions by which we depend on if our artistic work will be funded?
No, I meant
Or
more in general institutions, because it's not
yeah.
only the funding ones, but also, like for example, you have, okay, in Balkan, kind of the ones who are connected to dance and choreography, it's mainly funding institutions. But I mean, other places they also do have institutions where, for example, you are recognized as an artist with a status, and that's not anymore a funding structure. That's another.
Producing, let's say, or yeah.
Yeah, that's for example, like the government recognizing you
Mm-hmm.
as a status, as a profession, as complexity of profession. Which, for example, Bulgaria is lacking a status or definition for an artist. Macedonia have already moved with those steps further, which was 2.5 years ago. They redefined it. It was existing, but it was very old, since 70 something was not changed. And Spain is having also very big difficulty of understanding it. Like, it exists as a status, but the way what is understood and confirmed is different. It's very, I think, needs a huge amount of update. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I when I think of institution, I think mainly about funding. Like there is also the other funny part. For example, like embassies, or like for example this Instituto Cervantes, like it's kind of like
Culture.
Spanish, yeah, culture, related to culture. Like the you just need to show you're an artist and your nationality is in Spanish, and somehow you have support. You know, like I have been like working in a really low, like really small scale in Spain, and one of a sudden I get support to go to perform in Belgrade just because of the fact I'm Spanish. You know, like so there is like this um, differences in how we are supported or elected or like even recognized, depending on
Institution.
which institutional body. Yeah, it's. Mm,
Maybe also because they have yeah, they are like tools for different needs, let's say, or like they are institutionalized because of different reasons. So exactly, this inside institutions and the outside representative, for example, or other institutions. And mainly, in fact, institution means something that is, I don't know, established or put in a spot and then built upon this spot. So somehow, maybe that's why also it's possible to think about imaginary institutions, because in fact, you can, for any reason, put something on a place and then build a bit upon it. So I think exactly maybe when we meet so much resistance or so much so little understanding in institutions, then it's really the time to think, why were they invented, who invented them, how old are they? Because sometimes we think they are there forever and they're only, I don't know, 10 years old, but it's because we just heard of them, we think they were there forever. So somehow this constructedness of the institution, to me, helps I don't know, address it or relate. I don't know if I can give particular examples, but for sure, the moment I started realizing that it's man-made, it's not just there. Really, the conversation, like even a conversation, is possible, or I know it will take time, or I don't know, or I get frustrated and I don't want to have anything in common with an institution. So it's somehow, yeah, the man-made part is, I think, also shared with us, and then these practices of imagining can help somehow.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know, also big part of imagining an institution or imaginative institution, it's also relieving from certain bureaucratical structure, which it seems that that part of institution process of institutionalization are the ones that makes even harder the communication or the conversation, or it brings more the notion that we experience institutions so rigidly, like firmly established in one spot without movement. Because in my experience, that like I've been many times staying with a sensation that like, okay, in a specific Nordic countries, they're so fast with bureaucracy, like that you have the issue and immediately like, I don't know, even the how like this whole situation with COVID was organized, that like you just send a message and the next day on the door, somebody brings you the test on with the taxi, you take it, you give it back. Like they organize, like there is an organization, and I come to to Macedonia, and just to get a public test here because of certain like how to say symptoms, it takes ages. It takes lining up, and it's a bureaucratical thing. You need to run, take a document, another document, like it's only about the arrangement of this and these bureaucratic procedures. And I have a feeling a big part of imaginative institution to be so easily moldable, changeable, and buildable, it's just taking away the part of bureaucratizing it or legalizing it per se, making it making it let's say administratively legal body.
Uh, I don't know if it's about like taking it away, but maybe it's about like having this bureaucracy like changing constantly. I don't know. Like, um,
Because
I mean,
also
bureaucracy.
the
Uh,
hierarchy
sorry, Jana.
is the hierarchy, the wait so long, the steps to go through so many different steps. So this it's like prolonging the whole time schedule of one procedure. It needs to pass so many people. It's not like together take the decision, you know.
I mean, of course, if you take our case, collective authorship in terms of production and work, or solo authorship, it's totally different dynamic as a timing, as a practice, as an approach, as material, and like we have experience from being two to being four people being authors of one and same piece, or one and same work, or one and same practice, or whatever, and the timing that it's necessary to work on those things, it's totally, I've experienced it very different. So if you imagine like a collective structure, and plus on top of that collective structure there is a hierarchy, plus on that hierarchy, however, like we say, fastness of changing the like bureaucracy, I don't think so fast can be changed. There are so long protocols, there are so long procedures only to open up a status of a in a country. It requires like a
Yeah.
month.
And it also seems now they are more and more profiling the clerks or the people who work in bureaucracy. So really, it's like one step with one place and another step in another place and so on. And then it becomes like a chain reaction that you cannot skip any of the chain rings. And maybe that's why also this non-hierarchical, and when it's like you're dependent to each other, but not really. Like there is also a level of independency of the process. Yeah. And so these chain reactions really are.
I was thinking
No wonder.
bureaucracy, maybe like I understood it completely. I mean, I'm thinking it as a system, so that's why I was talking about like maybe it's not like throwing it away, but like to be in constant change, because also like it's true, like in relation to collective authorship or like this imaginative institution, like I think in my experience they function when in kind of small groups, like as you say, 4 people, 5, I don't know, maybe 10 even, but they require like a lot of work in and dialogue and like constant updating. And I also think that like and really weak, like, or weak. These structures are also really fragile, let's say. Like it's quite easy to just like disappear, because it's kind of like it's a hard work to keep it going, you know, and to keep it functioning.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that, because I don't know for what purpose would need to be faster first, and for what purpose need to be functioning, going in a, let's say, pragmatic form. I understand in terms of bureaucracy, but in terms of working procedures, like I find it very. I have a feeling that there is a certain huge, let's say, beneficial part if we would experience that the certain structure doesn't belong to anybody but belongs to whole constellation of working system. So in that sense, we are not necessarily needing to deal with any privatization of certain structures. Like, let's say you have a director and you know you need to pass through the procedure, or you have like the whole, like in concretely choreography sector, for example, when it's like the theaters and you have artistic director that start building up a whole profile around some theater and becomes like such a exquisite profiling a system which is I mean, of course it's beautiful, it just allows different or have different way how it's engaging in the field of choreography and dance and working in choreography and dance in comparison to venues that are way more, let's say, run by certain collective structures where such a profiling, it doesn't become capitalized structure, it doesn't become like certain, let's say, economy and status driven formats, and it becomes way more working field. And this is, for example, my interest when we are speaking of institutionalization, also which type of institutionalization institutes we are talking. Like, are we speaking about like continuing having like the biggest amount of support structures for production, festivals, and let's say production, post-production, and what is the other thing, education? Like, where are all other, like from the research sector part, from the part of practicing, not even researching, but practicing. Like, what is the whole segment that doesn't involve any of those, let's say, product orientated or result orientated formats, but there's a whole section of practicing where, for example, institutions are doing exactly that. It's a practice that, like, they are being supported for keep sustaining the practicing, keep doingness of the thing. There is no any result coming out of it. It's just a certain system of practicing, and that's what I'm wondering why why there is not such a support structures for artists doing the practicing as well, the keep doing of and the keep working of around choreography and dance without the necessity of like producing it. I mean, not only, but it's lacking big part of that type of institutions or the type of understanding from the side of institutions. And especially even more problematic it is that when the institutions are so hierarchical that then you start putting it on names or political parties or like even ideologies or like, and that becomes an issue. So this is why I think imaginative institution is like it's not that it's necessary, it's craving. I mean, come on, we had like the moment of COVID, the one like very sexy, horny moment when you think like now the world and the whole functional system is going to go totally differently. And am I going to be experiencing a huge change of of systematic infrastructure? And that was the moment for me. It was like, my God, but it is so necessary. It is so necessary to start building up structures that are undetectable. Like, you cannot detect them, and they will start playing the role of support structure. Like, I'm totally.
But it's true also. Also around this COVID situation, like more the artists, the organization, curators, the workers, cultural workers, are like questioning the institutions, the support, like financial bodies, like even more and more. So maybe it's like coming needs, like really what you're saying, that it's the time of like imagining more and more and go like alternative structures like this, or like imaginative institutions, or mm,
Mm. I don't know if I like as a real, maybe it's an idiotic example, but during COVID, like there was a big movement with the artists from Tenerife because there was no any support or any type of call for help, um, for emergency help. So then, like by pushing, they kind of convince an institution, kind of like show them a way to cheat, or like they imagine a way to get funded, and it was by like making a catalog of possible future potential projects that they don't need to get realized, but you apply with this project, then they can also excuse to their upper institutions or upper obligations. And it really worked. It worked as everybody just wrote a project, and we did the application, and then you just get the money, and there is nothing to be excused or whatsoever. That's your project. They did a catalog. There is a whole booklet with different like type of proposals that one can
so
access.
it's basically kind of a imaginative application, imaginative or imaginary call or something.
Yeah.
It's a little bit to imagine what would have the program be if it would have not been environment or circumstances. But still, it is necessary. Like what I also find big issue, that it's necessary to have that product. So there is no understanding whatsoever from systematic functioning in nowadays capitalistic and neoliberal system, that it's like that it's necessary a certain like support for keep practicing. Like
here in Hessen, for sure, at the moment there are several tools, financial tools that are for research, and you're not expected in the first step to have a product. So then you kind of can decide if you want to apply for the second step, and then you kind of have to produce something. But it seems that here the advocacy organizations in Hessen and also in Berlin are the two that I'm following. They are managing to negotiate this type of funds for rethinking what is our work in these new conditions. And then this is how it is stated in the call. But as far as I know, for example, in Berlin, they never have enough funds to respond to as many people as are applying. Well, I think here in Hessen, it's still kind of a good proportion of like there is a certain status that you need to prove as an artist in the field, like freelance artist. But somehow it feels supportive, at least to this point. At the beginning, it felt there was nothing, and then they quite worked a lot on tools, and yeah. So maybe also this, that we're talking about different dynamics of different bureaucratic systems, and maybe it will a bit take time, some different amount of time in different places to also realize that the new conditions will need maybe new approaches. I don't know. I don't know how is it in Bulgaria at the moment. I heard that there would be maybe structure funds and structural funds, which maybe can be used then, like each organization can then establish why they need them, or what will be the way to use them in these conditions. So somehow it seems that in Bulgaria, the COVID brought a bit of more thinking about how to take care of
That's very
precarity.
discussion if it was the right moment for this thing. Of course, it was the right moment to kind of win that war with the institutions because it was the right moment to point out issues. But is it the right moment when there are coming European funds instead of like directing it towards everybody? So again, we are reaffirming the same hierarchical infrastructure.
You mean that there it's done through application? That's
No,
what you mean, or?
that the biggest amount of money are going to go, or the biggest amount of like budget that is going to be like direct instead of being directed towards all of the artists again to survive for a long period of time in this type of situation. We are going to use like it's going to be used the European funds for initiating structural funds, which only organizations that are more than 3 or 4 or 5 years,
Yeah.
and artists that do not exist as a status there even. So therefore, we are starting to build, like it's starting to appear a certain infrastructure where one of a sudden the whole infrastructure of supporting artists are getting institutionalized, like recognized with fundings, with even definitions. So where artists, it just staying still in certain old understanding and I don't know, the one that probably need to come from a middle upper class family in order to survive in the field or otherwise, I don't know, just work somewhere. And even the fact that artists, it is not considered as an institution, that it have all of these things, structures that need to be like produced, that's a little bit problematic that in that all conversations, it was more necessary to speak about structural fund before we speak about status of artist. But there is a logic, of course. It just I like to bring it to an absurd because still I would say like the biggest amount of the budget is going to be directed towards again affirming the ones who have been for many years working, affirming the ones who are institutionally like let's say have been properly functioning, but about the ones who have been working with totally imaginative institutions or institutions which are not recognized by the bureaucratic structure. Never mind that the whole culture is driven on that labor.
So you mean things that are organized on a, how to say, regular basis by people who are not bound in an organization cannot prove that they can be structurally funded?
No,
No, and even if you open an organization now, it's like
not
Yeah, but
possible.
this is, I mean, this is clear. I think everywhere the structural funds are given only to organizations that are already proven that they know what to do for 3-4 years.
of course.
But
No, that's the code. But regardless of that, in such a precarious, not only that the field is precarious, but such a precarious position, such a rigid. Of course, it's the only moment to hit with certain future changes, like a hope for better future with these structural funds. But still, just to be aware that it's on the back of everybody as an artist there. Like, of course, the artists they got certain help and they're getting, but now we are discussing how much it's enough of that enough, and if that's enough for the artist, why we don't consider that that's enough for the whole structure? Because we are all in the same possibility of applying there. Anyway,
yeah,
meaning
now I understood.
that there is a future
Mm.
looking for certain structures which start reaffirming the stereotypical vertical hierarchical structure rather than really thinking of like, okay, where is the solidarity, where is the whole understanding, and where is the togetherness here? Because there is no together, there is no practicing of togetherness, there is just practicing of like my wars against your wars a little bit. But yeah, that's my criticism for Bulgaria dealing with the situation. Sweden, it's worst even in elitistic practices on support only for very little part. But we are waiting the news now. They announced it's coming a new strategy for support.
In Sweden.
Yeah, I cannot speak about that still. Haven't been announced clearly what it is.
Nice.
I don't know. Let's hope that let's imagine a structure that is going to finish this type of session. Because I think it is not only a time, but also it is very much the atmosphere of finishing a session.
Yeah. But yeah, how to.
It feels that what you just now described is a very paradoxical need of atomization, like to the institutions to see the artists as atoms, I don't know, or elements, so that if they provide for each artist, this would allow for collective or imaginative institutions to exist. But if they still support already organized structures, this kind of fixes the status quo. And in the moment when it's possible things to move, they cannot, exactly because of this, which it seems paradoxical to go to the individualization to be able to go to the collective. But somehow I really think it makes sense, at least to the situation of Bulgaria, which is the one that I kind of maybe know the best by now.
Yeah, maybe because that type of individualization, when it comes to certain economical support structure, if we are all being taught in the same kind of treatment approach way, regardless of your 10 years or 5 years or 1 year experience, the situations is as it is. So never mind in which part of your development it is. I'm not of a lover of supporting, like paying social taxes for money to go for hierarchical structure that 10 years is just more than 1 year, when it's a situation that nobody can be practicing it, regardless of your 10, 1 year, 3 months, or 1 year in future gonna be. But anyway, yeah, that's why in that type of, if I would need to approach individually everybody, so to say that everybody would be treated in a certain way equally or whatsoever, I would be voting for that type of individuality. But yeah.
Yeah, it also reminds me of the another thing that seems paradoxical at first sight, and this is in airplanes, you're first advised to take care of yourself and then to everyone else. So somehow maybe this logic is applicable now. So can this be our last thought, or we can have another round of imaginative imagination?
I think it's beautiful to have this,
Finish
that
with the airplane.
anecdote.
Yeah.
Since anyway, long time we haven't been hearing it, but maybe it's beautiful.
Yeah, to take care of yourself.
Closing session.
I think it's also related to what you said before, it about the institution being safe and like not being the responsibility of the institution, but being your own. Like how to how to take care of yourself and how to like sounds so naive, but like to stay in touch or like to really promote family.
There is one thing.
Family and kin.
I was all the time in the COVID. This is the expanded ending. That all the time during COVID, I was freaked out and I was pleasing everybody constantly. Do not take care about me, please. Take care with me together. Like, let's just take care together rather than taking care about me. I don't need you because those are also my taxes. I would say it's the taxes we are all dealing with. It's the material we are all dealing with. So maybe in the airplanes they need to change it. Like, first take care to put your own mask, and together with your companions take care of putting the masks to the others. Or we can all take care to put the masks.
All right.
Then also we can change institutions to gatherings and have imaginative to gatherings.
Exactly. Imaginative to gathering.
I think it's a must. If not, I don't know if it can happen.
Obviously, it has been happening.
Hmm?
I said, obviously, it has been happening all possible ways. Like, we have experienced it.
Hmm.
Beautiful. I think this is where our end hits with changing
Yes.
institution to imaginative gathering and togathering.
Thank you very much for inviting
you.
me for this dream round.
Thank you
Really
so
great.
much as well.
Thank you.
And
See you soon.
yeah, see you soon.
Yeah. Next week we continue with the other topic.
With the next topic, we continue 17th of September.
Thursday.
Thursday.
Ciao, ciao.